Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Kelly Jille. I'm a software engineer at Ordina, and I currently have an awesome assignment at the Dutch Forensic Institute. I'm living in Breda with my other half, Frank, one of my mentors, and I also have a cat, and she's an adventure cat, and her name is Yada. And Yada is named after Yoda, one of my other heroes. And Yada also means chosen one in Hebrew, and then everything came together. I live in Breda, the Netherlands. I like to keep myself busy with the magic of tech, people, health, sports, and riding my motorbike and traveling. And with regard to my cat, she's an adventure cat. And if you're triggered by now by the term of adventure cat, that's really something. And if you'd like to know more about it, then you should go to www.adventurecats.org, and then you see that we're not the only geeks. To start this talk with, I'd like to introduce you to one of my childhood heroes, Mr. Miyagi. And before I do so, I would like to know something first. So please raise hands if you don't know Mr. Miyagi, if you now think Mr. Who. Well, don't worry, because we'll come to this now. I would like to take you to the time when I was about 8 years old. I remember very well that at that age, you could ask your parents if you could stay up longer that evening. And they say yes if you shouldn't go to, if you're not going to school the next day. So at one evening in the weekend, I asked my parents, please, 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 can I stay up tonight to watch the Karate Kid movie? And because I didn't have to go to school the next day, they said yes. And that's how I met Mr. Miyagi. I think I can't introduce you any better to Mr. Miyagi than the main character of the story, Daniel. And Daniel has also been called Daniel's son. You are about to meet the greatest guy. This guy, he's funny, he's smart. I mean, you got a problem? He's got the answer. He's like no one you ever meet. And on top of that, he just happens to be my best friend. Mr. Miyagi comes from Okinawa, Japan. He has a deep philosophical knowledge of life and extraordinary karate skills. He's a genuinely caring, sweet, warm-hearted, and friendly person. He's wise. He's very, very wise. And he has a genius sense of humor, if you ask me. With this package, he was the mentor, the karate sensei of Daniel, and he made him a worthy champion. As an 8-year-old, what I loved about Mr. Miyagi is that he made the effort to pass on something he was very good at to a younger generation, selflessly, and initially without knowing each other well. Simply based on the right chemistry they had with each other. I think I even wished Mr. Miyagi was my grandfather because I hadn't really a grandfather figure in my life. And because from a very young age, I wanted to become very good at what I do. Mr. Miyagi's martial arts caught my interest because I felt that if I could do that, I could always take care of myself. And he taught with morals in place. He was never aggressive and would only fight to defend himself, showing that he did not allow his abilities to corrupt his mind. He was teaching Daniel both life lessons and karate to protect himself. I was hooked from the moment I saw this movie. And I even decided that I want to become a Kelly-san myself, my own hero. Now I'd like to take you with me to some of my other mentors, or some of my own mentors, not the other mentors, because unfortunately, Mr. Miyagi wasn't one of my mentors. So 2 years passed after my wish to become a Kelly-san, and then it happened. I found my own sensei. My own karate journey started. The karate school where I ended up also happened to be one of the best in the Netherlands at the time. So it started to look more and more like Karate Kid in real life. My sensei was a fantastic teacher, completely devoted in what he taught us. He taught us and everyone else in our dojo what he knew and what he could. With us, in this context, I mean the tournament group I was part of. He taught us all that you can achieve a lot with dedication, discipline, the right mindset, practice and perseverance. That karate is a weapon, that you must always try to solve things with compassion first. The dojo was inside of a primary school where we could train 2 days a week. But like I said, I was part of a tournament group, and we had to train more often, and that resulted in us often training outside. I can tell you there were intense times, but those were fantastic. And in the end, I can say that it has borne fruit. In the first place, it made me more confident at school. Getting through secondary school unscathed felt like a challenge of its own. During this time of life, your personality is going through an important development. It will be shaped by negative and positive experiences. I was neither one of the least nor one of the most popular students. I remember well that one day I had to deal with, both literally and figuratively, the big bully of the class who would occasionally slap some of the boys. And I succeeded. I was confident enough when it was needed. In the second place, in my 6 years of karate, I have made it to the brown belt. I've won about 50 prizes. I became national champion in several disciplines and third of Europe. So what, you might think? Well, the point is that mentoring has a very, very great impact here. Although meeting my sensei was more a twist of fate, he has been of a huge importance in my life. If you're still a little skeptical and think, well, nice example, but I don't quite see it happening on a professional level, stick with me then, because now I'm going to introduce you my second Mr. Miyagi, and she might inspire you. In the second year of my law studies, I wanted to work at a law firm as a part-time job. So I sent application letters and I was invited to have an interview with my other Mr. Miyagi, or rather Mrs. Miyagi. I had a choice of several future mentors from different law firms and finally chose her. We had a great conversation and it was just right. The right chemistry was there. I was confident that she would be a good mentor and would be able to deal with my vulnerabilities. Although we sometimes had our difficulties, because that also happens in a mentoring relationship, we always managed to work it out together, and that's also important. I really learned incredibly much from her. I remember well when I just started. one of my first days, she asked me to answer an email with a legal question from a client. I thought, how do you actually respond properly to your client? I had no idea. And really, that's so basic. Only someone has to tell you. Especially if you imagine your client to be a super duper, very important person, and you want to be 100% sure that you answer that person as such on your first working days. I got my first legal document back completely red. And that was the color of the pen which it was corrected. And then I thought, okay, the previous 2 years of my law studies were like getting your driver's license, you know? Like, you know your theory, you're not a big danger anymore, but that's all there is to it. You really learn the skill by observing and applying it into practice. Because of her, my learning curve was steep. I was able to become a good lawyer beneath her wings. I soon got my own cases in which she always remained my sounding board. And again, the mentoring relationship has paid off. The legal case that stayed with me to this day is the one which I assisted a woman who had just recovered from cancer. She wanted to go back to work, but her employer was acting strange. She has an important position at a large banking firm. It became clear that her employer wanted to get rid of her. It became a case based on the Dutch law regarding equal treatment. But an appeal to this law in this context was ever hardly won. At least at that time. Because it was difficult to prove that someone is being discriminated against based on illness. But I succeeded, and we won the case. Again, because I had the privilege of learning the craft of law from a good mentor. At that time, I had everything in place from a materialistic point of view. But from a certain moment, I went to work crying. Because the work didn't make me happy anymore. In 2014, I decided to quit the legal profession. Because I believe that you should do what makes you happy in life. And certainly also because I wanted to leave my job well done. Shortly afterwards, within 5 months, even more happened. My father died. My unhealthy relationship came to an end. And with that, I also lost my house. So that was quite a rocky road. I felt completely lost. I no longer knew how, what, how, where, and why. Just when I made the decision to grab my motorbike and to go to the other side of the world, to find some rest and peace, another Mr. Miyagi crossed my path. And nowadays, he's my best friend. After this mentor put his mentoring skills into practice and some soul searching of my side, I finally came close to myself. For the first time, I really knew the answer to the aforementioned questions. I had a throwback to the IT lessons I had in secondary school. And it made me laugh again when I think about these lessons. Back then, we made our own website with HTML and our own currency calculator. I just couldn't stop and thought, I can do magic, and I absolutely love it. I also remember that I wanted to become a hacker. So I made the decision to become a software engineer with a passion for security. All these mentoring relationships I told you about are of irreplaceable value to me. They have been life-changing. I've told you these stories for a reason. This talk is based on my experience of mentoring since I was 10 years old. And by sharing my experiences as a mentee, I hope I can make you feel how powerful mentoring can be. And there is more. When I took my first steps into my career switch to the IT world, I discovered that mentorship is not a matter of course. I was a tester before I started as a software engineer. I was told to take that path because I hadn't an IT background. So I applied and clearly stated that I wanted to become a software engineer, and I was hired. I got training, which consisted of doing some internal courses and getting the internal certificates which go with those courses. And I got my TMAP certificate, which is a well-known certificate related on quality engineering. I landed in a fast-paced environment, and I certainly learned something, but much of the time I was also trying not to drown. At first, there was no time for real guidance. I asked a lot of questions, but got so many different answers and tips and new questions, it often came down to an even greater challenge not to drown. It was overwhelming. At a certain point, I was kind of paralyzed by analysis, and I decided that things had to change if I wanted to obtain my goal of becoming a software engineer. Shortly afterwards, I had a fantastic job interview with one of Ordina's directors in a restaurant cafe in Breda. And that's how I became a software engineer. And not just that. I also found a mentor again. And that has really been a difference of day and night. For example, there are times when I get lost in reading. And when I finally finish reading the documentation, I think, and what have I just learned? Of course, I've learned something, but I still don't have the answers to many of the questions that made me read the documentation in the first place. Instead, new questions came up. There are also plenty of moments where I Google pretty every word in a sentence, concluding that there is a lot of jargon, and jargon within the jargon, and then jargon in the definitions of jargon, which keep me Googling almost every word in a sentence. Well, I'll try to find my way around to try to invent the wheel myself. I keep on missing something. And that something is context. And that's where mentorship comes in. Because guess who's giving me that context? My own Mr. Miyagi in the IT world. The over-enthusiastic tech lead who cannot stop talking when I ask him a question. And don't get me wrong, I totally love his over-enthusiasm. Because every time, over and over again, that's what giving me the crucial context. It really brought home for me the importance of mentorship again. And then it clicked. I've been driven by the question why all my life. My mother always tells me that I used to ask this so often that it became annoying, just so you know. So when I found out that mentoring is not a matter of course in the IT world, I thought, why? What a pity. And that is exactly the reason why I'm sharing my experience and ideas with you here today. To add weight to it, I've made the link with research. I looked at whether my own experience and ideas can be found in society, science, or both, so that they are research-backed. Now that I have shared some experiences, I would like to take you to the following question. What is mentoring? I run with this definition. Mentoring is a learning relationship involving the sharing of skills, knowledge, and expertise between a mentor and a mentee through developmental conversations, experience sharing, and role modeling. The relationship may cover a wide variety of contexts and is an inclusive two-way partnership for mutual learning that values differences. If you ask me, mentoring is also a skill and an art that you learn by experiencing it, by doing it, by being it. Mentoring takes different forms, and they are all important, if you ask me. But for this talk, for the rest of my talk, I will focus specifically on apprenticeship. Almost all of my experiences, which I just shared with you, involve this form of mentorship. Apprenticeship focuses on the development of the apprentice, the mentee, where the master, the mentor, trains the apprentice to one day become a master, a mentor himself. Translated to the IT world, apprenticeship is the training of a new generation of developers through the combination of a general study program and enforced with on-the-job training from a mentoring relationship. I'd like to bring up Robert Greene here. This is Robert Greene. He's the author of the books The 48 Laws of Power and Mastery. In his book, The 48 Laws of Power, he states the ultimate form of power is mastery. In his book Mastery, he explains the power of apprenticeship by explaining the biographical stories of great masters such as Darwin, Goethe, and Da Vinci. Because before they became masters of their chosen field, they were apprentices themselves. He says the following about the apprenticeship model. The greatest system ever invented for the training of skills and the achievement of tacit knowledge. In other words, context. He also speaks about the apprenticeship phase, which he describes as follows. After your formal education, you enter the most critical phase in your life. A second, practical education, known as the apprenticeship. Every time you change careers or acquire new skills, you re-enter this phase of life. Looking at ourselves, don't we often say that we actually learn on the job? The word mentor comes from ancient Greece. According to Homer's Odyssey, mentor is Odysseus' counselor and best friend. Looking at my own experiences as a mentee, and the outcomes of my research, I can actually conclude that a mentor generally helps the mentee by challenging and encouraging the mentee, giving emotional and moral support, being a sounding board, discussing goals and how to get there, giving advice, integrating the mentee into working processes, the work environment and the organization's culture, let's say the how we do things here part, and helping to build up a network. A mentor helps the mentee to walk the path the mentor has already walked. By sharing his mistakes, his woes, and his wins, the mentor already overcomes similar challenges and obstacles that a mentee may encounter on his path. It has given me insight and confidence in what I do. Besides, I could grow safely beneath the wings of my mentor. It helped me to have a steep learning curve. And besides that, it's also worth pointing out that a mentoring relationship also benefits the mentor. This is also reflected in the definition I just gave. Through the dynamics of mentoring, the mentor is in turn challenged in his mastery. In being so, he develops his leadership skills, management skills, and interpersonal skills. Who is the mentor? Mentoring will have only a positive impact on mentees, mentors, and organizations as a whole if it's done in a good and thoughtful way. In fact, at its worst, mentoring can do enormous harm to a person. This lies in the nature of the mentoring relationship because it's based on respect, openness, and trust. It reveals vulnerabilities. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, being a mentor comes also with a duty. The duty to do what lies within one's circle of influence to make it a positive experience. On the one hand, by focusing on someone's talents and strengths. On the other hand, by being honest about someone's improvement points. A good mentor is one who is really capable of giving constructive feedback. Strict, but fair. It must be someone you can discuss with freely and without fear. Someone who has the mentee's best interest at heart and who understands the path the mentee is walking. That being said, this also means that not just anyone is suitable for the mentor role. Like I said, a mentoring relationship can make or break a mentee. So now I'm going to unpack 10 best practices. Number 1, a free choice. It might sound common sense, but believe me, it's not. It is very important to let the mentor and mentee choose each other. You cannot force a mentoring relationship. There needs to be a good chemistry. That tends to be a good starting point. Also give the mentee the freedom to change mentors if the mentoring relationship doesn't work out, or if other skills or knowledge are needed. Train the mentor. Considering mentoring's fragile nature, it should not be taken lightly. In any case, let the mentor walk his own path as a mentor, but with a set of basic skills. Think of certain coaching skills. For example, how to guide without judging and how to give feedback. Number 3, match. So make a match based on working and learning style. Let the mentor and mentee calibrate with each other. Make sure that they discuss their do's and don'ts. Make sure the mentors and mentees' goals, interests, and needs are aligned, and so that they have a good time. Let them have lunch together, for example. A trust-based relationship. The mentoring relationship is a trust-based one. So what happens there must stay there. In order to let them build trust, give them enough time, space, and contact moments. Because, again, you cannot force trust. An agenda. Set an agenda, which may also consist of just having a chat without an agenda, having a walk. It is also good to agree on intermediate goals, so you really work towards some goals together. And in that way, I think things can work out. No copy and paste. So, this is really, really important. The mentee is not a clone of a mentor. It is very nice to hear the mentor's experience, what it was like in his time, what mistakes he made, what the mentor wants the mentee to protect from, what he learned. I think you got me so far, right? So please be aware, the mentee is not a mini-me. And because a mentor shares a lot of himself, this is a major pitfall. The key here is empathy. Being able to understand how somebody else experiences the world without judging. The mentor must therefore be able to step out of his own frame of reference. He should ask the mentee what the biggest barriers are to his success right now, with what he can help. Ask how the mentee learns the best, because everybody does that in a different way. The answer to these questions may not be the same as what the mentor has been used to all of his life. And he must able to deal with that. Last but not least, every senior and mentor should not forget how some things they learn now might be easier because they can build on the things they learned before. They started in the apprenticeship phase with their own challenges and struggles. So they were an apprentice too some years ago. The workflow. Make mentoring part of the workflow. As an employer or client, offer a sufficient amount of time apart from on-the-job training and everything that comes with it and happens more organically. You can think of 1 hour a week. That was what helped me with my mentor. Get some seniors and tech leads who have the core skills and knowledge about the technologies you want, as well as the ability to be good mentors. Put your money where your mouth is by truly providing these growth and development opportunities. You will get very, very good employees in return. A mentoring program. Provide a mentoring program. Take different groups into account. For example, students, graduates, but also lateral entrants like me. A mentoring program is different from a young professional program or just a study program with basic training. It's complementary to that and a multiplier to its success. Create a moment of evaluation by asking feedback from the participants. Plan a moment of reflection for yourself. After all, improvements are mainly discovered along the way. Let it become a matter of continuous improvement and fine-tuning. The mentee's performance. The mentor is not responsible for the mentee's performance. It's up to the mentee what he does and what he does not. The mentor only supports the mentee with that. Number 10. Mistakes and successes. Appreciate the mistakes. Celebrate the successes. And please, do not only say this, but live it. Give the mentee enough chances to grow just by making those mistakes. Because the greatest growth takes place out of the comfort zone. But in the comfort zone, also the most mistakes are made. So make sure that there's really a culture in which mistakes can be made. So the one thing I also learned from my mentor is to not forget taking a selfie during your talk. So I'd like to do this before I got to the next point. So I kindly ask you to smell and to be with me here right now taking a selfie. So 1, 2, 3, smell. Thank you. So that's a nice takeaway from my mentor, but I'm not there yet. The thing that gets me even more than a missed opportunity that mentoring is not yet normalized in our community is what I'm going to tell you now. As a community, we have a big problem. But before I dive into it, I would like to ask you something first. And I like to ask you to ask this to yourself, not to answering it all together. Did I have to deal with delayed releases? Missed revenues? Increase project costs? An excessive workload or higher stress level? An increase in project duration or operational costs? Reduced quality of the software developed? A limited ability to meet the objectives of the business? So, if your answer to one or more questions is yes, then I have bad news. If your answer to every question was no, then I have the same bad news. Because this is what our future looks like if we keep doing what we are doing now. According to CompTIA's data, the required level of expertise in job requirements for software developers is mainly between 3 and 10 years of experience. The demand of juniors lags behind, even though that the meteors are the seniors of the future. According to Skillsource data, 75% of global IT decision makers report a skills shortage in the IT workforce. This is an increase of 145 since 2016. Here are some other numbers to put this into a little more perspective. It is expected that in 2022, the financial impact of the IT skills shortage will result in a loss of $775 billion worldwide. This is due to delayed releases, missed revenues, or increased costs. In 2019, this was $302 billion. So right now, there are simply not enough qualified candidates. It's probably a dead giveaway, but I'll say it anyway. Doing nothing changes nothing. Except for these outrageous numbers, which only get worse, as you just saw. As a developer, you notice this, for example, by an excessive workload or a higher stress level. And other signs are an increase in project duration and operational costs. Reduced quality in software developed. A limited ability to meet the objectives of the business. Mentoring is the solution for our community's problem. Mentoring turns out to be a good talent management strategy. It ensures learning and growth within the company's culture. This is because employees play an active role in sharing knowledge and best practices. By doing so, a company shows also that it values investing in development and that it values its workforce. Mentees have better career outcomes than employees without a mentor. Besides, they feel more engaged and satisfied than employees without a mentor. The performance of mentees are better than employees without a mentor. And from the mentor's perspective, you see also more satisfaction and greater engagement. It also provides a setting in the whole company culture which more new things are created and shared. If mentoring becomes an integral part of your organization, then the positive thing is also that it can be carried out in a more cost-efficient and scalable way. I strongly believe that we can create the seniors and meteors of our improved future. We can do this by matching today's students and juniors with a mentor. And beyond that, the system has survived for so long for a reason. Other professions have applied mentoring successfully for many years already. Sometimes it's even mandatory, for example, in the legal profession where I come from. The mentee doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. He gets the tacit knowledge. The context that he cannot get in any other way. It picks up where theory leaves off and lets the mentee build up its own wealth of knowledge, skills, experience, and expertise in an irreplaceable way. That means a steeper learning curve, a faster path to success and delivering substantial value to the employer and the client. I end where I began, to complete the circle. With karate. For me, mentoring is like a kata. In ancient times, the kata was developed by masters and practitioners of Chinese Kung Fu. as a way of archiving their knowledge and passing it on to future generations. Existing forms of knowledge transfer were not suitable for this purpose. Mentoring is just like that, a specific and necessary form of knowledge transfer. It's also crucial to mitigate IT staff shortages as much as possible. I hope my story has made that clear by now. I want to leave on a note that it's hard to change in a day. But don't forget that if we do nothing, we are screwed. So that's why I like to challenge you to think how you can integrate mentorship into your daily work. Because I'm sure some of you are in the position to bring this into practice. I would appreciate if you did, so that you take care for yourself, but also for future generations. Just one passionate person can make a great difference. So imagine what we can do as a community. Having your own Mr. Miyagi shouldn't be luck, but a given. Be Mr. Miyagi or find one. Thank you very much. I think there's some time left for questions, right?
Okay, I have the microphone. Honestly, no. So we're already on the break. I would urge people that want to make some questions to try to reach you, because we have 10 minutes, I think, before the next session. So.
Oh yeah, and I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was a little confused.
Yeah, sorry for that, but so please contact Kelly directly if you can. Okay,
so
thank you.
Thank you very much, and you can reach me through Twitter or LinkedIn. Please ask me the questions you have by using this channel, and I'm also walking at the conference center, so just ask me everything you want to know, and I would be glad to help you. And last question, I would really love to have your feedback. So if you could do that for me, I can improve my talks in the future. Thank you very much.